Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Douglas Bryant. I'm 67 years old, a retired electrician from Pueblo, Colorado. For over 40 years, I worked with my hands, building other people's homes, lighting their hallways, wiring schools and offices, yet the one place I poured my soul into was the modest house on Hawthorne Street. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Mine and Elaine's. Elaine was my wife of 42 years before cancer took her away 3 years ago. Since then, the house had become a shrine to our memories. The rose bushes she planted still bloomed every spring. The quilt she stitched together by the fireplace was folded neatly on the recliner. Every creak in the floorboard whispered her name. My son, Derek, used to come around every once in a while, usually when something in his car needed fixing or he needed a small loan. I gave it freely. That's what parents do, right? You give until it hurts. Until you're hollow. Derek and his wife, Monica, started visiting more often about a year ago. I thought it was out of concern. That maybe, just maybe, we were growing close again. But concern wears a different face than calculation. It started with casual comments. Dad, this house is too big for you. You shouldn't be mowing lawns at your age. What if you fall and no one's around? I laughed it off. I was still strong, still independent. I didn't need a nurse, just a little peace and quiet. Then came the dinner. One rainy Tuesday night, they invited me to a restaurant I couldn't afford on my own. They sat me down like I was being served a life sentence wrapped in a bow. Monica did most of the talking. Doug, she said, all saccharine sweetness, we love you. But we're worried. Living alone isn't safe anymore. Derek nodded like he'd rehearsed the script. We found a senior living place. It's new, modern. You'd have your own space, your own room. I felt my appetite die mid-bite. You want me to move into a facility? Not a facility, Monica chimed. It's a luxury apartment complex. Near the park. And besides, she leaned forward, you could sell this house. It's worth a fortune now. The market's hot. I stared at them, the clinking of forks and muted laughter around us suddenly too loud. Sell the house your mother and I built together. It's just a house, Dad, Derek said casually. That's when the first crack split open in my heart. Over the next few weeks, they kept pushing. Monica came over often, showing me listings of assisted living condos. Just look at the amenities, she'd gush, flipping through glossy brochures. And there's even a shuttle to the grocery store. They came as a pair of wolves in sheep's clothing, couching greed as concern. Still, I resisted. Until the stroke. It was minor. A dizzy spell in the garage. I sat down before I fell, but it was enough. The doctor said I was lucky, but warned that living alone could be risky. And with that diagnosis in their hands, Monica and Derek pounced like vultures. I should have seen it then. The way they hovered like hospital staff one moment and real estate agents the next. When I finally relented, when I said, maybe I'll sell the house, they jumped at the words like starving dogs. Within a month, they had a buyer. The house sold for $480,000. I asked for time to pack my things, time to say goodbye. But they rushed me. It'll be easier once it's over, Monica said. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. No fireplace. No roses. No creaky floorboards. Just sterile walls and laminated counters. I thought they'd visit. Call. Check in. But the calls stopped. 1 week turned into 2. When I finally reached Derek, his tone had changed. Distant. Irritated. And then, 2 months later, they stopped paying the rent on the apartment. It was in Derek's name, supposedly a gesture of goodwill when I signed over the house proceeds. I was evicted. Just like that. I knocked on their door one cold November night with a suitcase in hand and nowhere else to go. Monica opened the door, her face tight and surprised. "Doug, what are you doing here? I have nowhere else to stay." She hesitated, then said words I'll never forget. "You're just a mouth to feed now." Derek stood behind her, silent. I left without another word. I walked 2 miles in the cold to the only place I knew I'd be anonymous, an overnight shelter in downtown Pueblo. I handed them my name and birthdate like a prisoner checking in. That night, I lay on a plastic cot under a thin blanket, staring at the ceiling tiles, wondering how I got here. They didn't just steal my house. They stole my dignity. And they didn't know yet, but they had just created a man with nothing left to lose. I spent the first few nights in that shelter like a ghost haunting his own bones. The smell of bleach and despair clung to the air. The fluorescent lights never really went off. Men coughed in the dark. A woman across the hall screamed in her sleep. I kept Ellen's photo in my wallet, pressed flat between 2 worn dollar bills, her face the last reminder of who I used to be. The man in that photo, the smiling, strong man in a denim jacket, with arms wrapped around his wife on the porch of a newly built house, that man was gone. What replaced him was a body running on bitter fumes. I had $6,800 left in my personal checking account. That was all. The rest, nearly $500,000, had been managed by Derek and Monica, supposedly to ensure my security. They had cut me out of my own life. I tried to talk to a legal aid volunteer at the shelter. She nodded sympathetically as I explained what happened, but I saw it in her eyes: no will, no paper trail, no written agreements. Derek had moved everything into his name with my signature. I had given it away. Legally. Willingly. Stupidly. "You were manipulated," she said gently. "But that doesn't make it illegal." That's when the guilt set in. What kind of man signs his legacy over to a snake and his fork-tongued wife? The meals at the shelter were a blur. A scoop of mashed potatoes, a rectangle of meatloaf, dry bread. I ate it without tasting it, chewing out of habit. I didn't speak to anyone. I didn't want pity. I wanted silence. I wanted answers. Most nights, I walked the perimeter of downtown Pueblo, not because I had anywhere to go, but because standing still made the pain louder. I passed my old electrician shop. It had been shut down years ago, but the brick building still stood, now tagged with graffiti. I remembered the long hours, the weight of my tool belt, the pride I took in wiring a job cleanly. I had built lives for strangers, and now mine was stripped bare by my own son. Derek wasn't always like this. I remembered him as a boy who brought me water while I fixed the water heater. Who cried when he broke his arm and clung to me like I was the only solid thing in the world. I raised him alone after his mother died. She left us too early. He was only 14. I had done everything I could. Somewhere along the way, the boy I loved turned into a man I couldn't recognize. And Monica. I'll never know if she poisoned him, or just unlocked a part of him I refused to see. But what tore me apart the most was the silence. No calls. No texts. No, "Dad, how are you?" I meant nothing to them. I was a used-up tool, tossed in a drawer. One night, as freezing rain blew sideways through the alley behind the shelter, I finally broke. I knelt behind the dumpster, shielding myself from the wind with a soggy cardboard box, and I cried. Not quietly. Not stoically. But with full, guttural sobs that racked my chest until I thought I might die from it. I whispered to Ellen. "I'm sorry. I failed. I trusted the wrong people. I gave our life away." The next morning, I woke up to a small miracle. A man named Victor, who worked with a non-profit helping the elderly reintegrate into society, offered me a small room at a transitional housing center, no strings attached. He said he saw something in my eyes. I didn't have the heart to tell him all he probably saw was anger. But I took the room. A twin bed. A shared bathroom. Clean sheets. Warmth. For the first time in weeks, I slept like I wasn't prey. But make no mistake, the fire in me hadn't gone out. It was starting to boil. I found an old tablet at the center's resource room and started doing something I hadn't done in a long time. I started watching people. I searched Derek's name on social media. His profile was public. Photos of lavish brunches with Monica. Posing in front of the dream home they had apparently purchased with hard work and faith. There it was, my house. Not mine anymore, but my house. I zoomed in on the porch, still painted the same shade of blue Elaine loved. The rose bushes looked trimmed. They had gutted the interior, I could tell. New granite counters. Modern lighting. The home Elaine and I built by hand, rebuilt to erase us. But they left the fireplace. And on the mantel, my eyes stung as I saw it, was the old wooden clock I carved for our 25th anniversary. He kept it. Probably because it looked expensive. Not because he remembered what it meant. It was then that I realized. They hadn't just erased me. They were profiting from my erasure. I searched property records through the city's online assessor's site. Took me a couple of hours to figure out, but when I did, I learned everything. They had sold my house just 3 months after I moved out. Sold it for $620,000, more than they told me they listed it for. The money went into a joint LLC Monica had created. The address on file? Not even the one they were living in now. They bought another house. In the hills. Bigger. Gated. I traced the LLC to a short-term rental business. Monica was running Airbnbs. With my money. That's when something shifted inside me. Grief turned to clarity. I was broke. Alone. But I wasn't done. I still had the skills. I still had the will. And now, I had the truth. They thought I was finished. But they had no idea who they buried. And what's buried deep, rises harder than stone. To be continued in Part 3, Secret Discovery. You ever hear that saying, the only thing more dangerous than a man with nothing to lose is a man who remembers everything he gave? That became my mantra. I stopped feeling sorry for myself the day I uncovered the truth behind that LLC Monica used. The name on it? Maple Stone Enterprises. Sounded like some classy interior design firm. But when I dug deeper, property records, online business registrations, and a few YouTube tutorials on LLCs, I saw it clear as day. My retirement, my legacy, had been turned into their empire. They had used the money from the house and the funds I'd unknowingly dumped into the family account to buy 4 properties in total. 4. My house was just the first. And none of it was in Derek's name. Monica controlled every dollar. She was smart, cruelly smart. By having the LLC in her name only, she kept full control. If things ever went south, Derek would walk away with nothing. Just like I did. She was building her kingdom on the backs of men who loved her and were too blind to see the noose tightening. I saved every file I could find. Screenshots. PDFs, property tax records. I printed them for 50 cents a page at the library. Slid them into a plastic folder labeled with one word. Fuel. At the Transitional Housing Center, I spent my nights in the resource room learning everything I could about small business licensing, reverse LLC lookups, and, this one hit me hardest, asset tracing. I wasn't just an old man with a tool belt anymore. I was a blueprint with a pulse. Then, one rainy morning, I stumbled across a local news article. A short blurb, really. But it changed everything. It read. Community Renovation Fund seeks skilled volunteers for Small Business Grants Program. They were offering 5 grants for people over 60 who had lost homes due to displacement, health crises, or financial abuse. Financial abuse. I read that word over and over. It rang in my ears like a siren. I applied. 3 weeks later, I was invited for an interview. A woman named Charisse, maybe in her late 30s, sat across from me in a city office with a warm smile and a clipboard. "So, Mr. Bryant," she asked gently, "what would you do with $25,000? My voice caught in my throat for a second. "I'd build again," I said. "Not just for me, but for people like me." I was thrown away by the people I trusted most. "I'd like to show folks that being discarded doesn't mean you stop being useful." She nodded slowly, her pen scribbling something on the page. 2 weeks later, I got the call. I had been approved. Not just for the grant, but for mentorship, a business license filing waiver, and a free spot at a community co-working space for 6 months. And just like that, Douglas Bryant was back in business. I didn't start with much, just a pair of rented sawhorses and some cheap pine wood, but my hands remembered. Oh, did they remember? I started making basic furniture again. Bookcases. Coffee tables. Toy boxes with smooth lids and rounded corners. Every one of them etched with a tiny signature burned into the wood. Built by a survivor. I uploaded photos to a simple website the program helped me build. Then I created a Facebook page and shared my story. Just enough to catch attention, not enough to blow everything up yet. It didn't take long before people started messaging me. "Your story reminds me of my dad's. My grandfather was a woodworker too. Can I order a box? I just want to support someone real. Thank you." Then came a message from a stranger named Vince Harper. I didn't recognize the name, but the profile said he was an investor in Colorado real estate and small-scale manufacturing. He messaged. "Saw your story. Reminds me of my father. Let's grab coffee, on me. Might be able to help." I met Vince 2 days later. He was in his 50s, sharp-dressed but unpretentious. When I told him the full story, not just the public version, but the betrayal, the lies, the fact that I was robbed blind by my own son and his wife, he didn't blink. "You ever want to go after them?" he asked. I stared at him for a long time. "No," I said. "I want to outlast them." Vince leaned back and smiled. "I can work with that." Turns out Vince had contacts with people who specialized in discreet acquisitions. Quiet ways of getting leverage, buying property, buying debt, and slowly wrapping a legal net around people who thought they were untouchable. He offered to partner with me, 25/75 split. He'd provide the capital. I'd provide the story. The skill. The mission. That night, I wrote a name on a blank note card and pinned it to my wall. Douglas and Company. Holdings. Underneath, in smaller letters, "We build. We reclaim." I was coming back. Not with fire. Not with fists. But with a plan. The first part of the plan. I used Vince's help to quietly buy into one of Monica's rental properties through a shell bidder. She had taken out a second mortgage on it, too much pride and too little cash flow. When the payment defaulted and it went up for sale, I made sure Douglas and Company won the bid. Monica never knew the buyer's identity. But I knew hers. The second part. I requested a full audit of the LLC she was using. It wasn't illegal, public records allow that if you're a partner in a connected enterprise. Vince's legal team made sure my request looked perfectly legitimate. And then we saw it. Fraud. Money mismanagement. Falsified home improvements billed at triple cost through fake contractors, all connected to Derek's signature. That's when I realized something that turned my stomach. Derek had been in on it more than I thought. He hadn't just been weak. He had been willing. But now I had paper. Receipts. Leverage. I wasn't going to the cops. Not yet. I wanted something more satisfying. I wanted to pull the floor out from under them the way they had done to me. And I knew just where to begin. Their current home, the luxury house in the hills, was running on fumes. Monica's Airbnb ventures had dried up. The market had dipped, and bad reviews were piling up. I read every one. When they missed 2 mortgage payments, I had Vince swoop in and buy their debt from the lender. And just like that, the home my son and his wife laughed me out of was mine again. They didn't know yet. But soon they would. Soon, they'd hear from the new owner. Soon, Douglas Bryant would become the last name they expected, and the only one they'd never forget. To be continued in Part 4, Revenge Planning. Revenge, when done right, is not loud. It doesn't need yelling. It doesn't come with fists or broken glass. It's quiet. Surgical. The slow turning of a key that no one even noticed until the door locks from the outside. I had no interest in ruining Derek and Monica overnight. No, I wanted them to feel the same drip of betrayal I had felt, the slow unraveling of security, the choking realization that everything they thought was theirs, was borrowed. And the landlord just came to collect. Once I gained ownership of the deed to their Mountain View home, through a silent acquisition of their mortgage debt, I didn't say a word. I waited. Waited while they lived lavishly, posting photos of champagne brunches and CEO life captions on Monica's Instagram. The irony? The house wasn't even in her name anymore. It belonged to Douglas and Company. Holdings. My name. My legacy. Quietly reattached to the home they'd built on the bones of my past. I sent the first official notice through my attorney. Nothing dramatic. Just a rent reassessment notice. Standard legalese. 1-page letter. But the message was simple. Effective immediately, monthly rent shall increase to $7,200 due to current market reevaluation. Payment due in 14 days. Failure to comply will initiate legal action per lease clause 9b. It was 3 times what they'd been paying. I knew they couldn't afford it. I didn't care. The very next day, my attorney received a furious voicemail from Monica. "She can't do this," she screamed. "This is abuse. This is a trap." Except I could. And I had. My lawyer calmly informed her that the new property owner had reviewed the contract and was simply following the terms they themselves had agreed to. Monica went silent after that. But I knew her. I knew her ego wouldn't let this go. She'd start poking. Digging. Trying to find out who the new owner was. And I wanted her to. In the meantime, I started preparing for the final stages of my plan. I knew eventually Derek would come crawling, not because he suddenly grew a conscience, but because pressure reveals the cracks. And I wanted to see exactly what kind of man he'd become. But I also needed to ensure I had every tool ready when that moment came. So I made 2 moves. First, I contacted a local journalist, someone who had previously written a piece about my woodworking shop and called me a symbol of dignity in the face of betrayal. Her name was Mia Vasquez. Young, sharp, and not afraid to dig into the messier parts of human nature. I told her the story, the real story. The betrayal. The stolen house. The silent revenge. "I'm not asking you to publish it now," I said. "But hold it. Because if they try to slander me or play victim, I want the truth to be louder." She agreed. Second, I visited the place I never thought I'd return to, the original house. The one Monica and Derek sold behind my back. The one where Elaine's rose bushes used to bloom. The new owners were a quiet, older couple named Greta and Harold. I didn't tell them the full story. I just asked if I could walk through the garden for a few minutes. They recognized me from the viral woodworking video and welcomed me kindly. As I stood in the backyard, the cold spring wind brushing against my neck, I felt a tear slip down my cheek. I whispered to Elaine. They tried to bury me here. But I'm still standing. That same week, my assistant from Douglas and Company handed me a letter. A request for a meeting from D. Bryant. No return address. No phone number. Just 5 words scribbled at the bottom. Please. For Emma's sake. Emma. My granddaughter. I had never met her. Monica never allowed it. Derek always made excuses. Now she was their last card. I didn't respond right away. I let it sit on my desk for 3 days, staring at it between sawdust-covered projects at the workshop. The kids I mentored saw the shift in my mood. You all right, Mr. Douglas? I just nodded. Ghosts don't rest easy. Finally, I agreed to the meeting. I didn't go alone. I brought Vince. We met at a diner on the outskirts of town, the kind where the coffee's always hot and the booths crackle when you slide in. Derek was already there. He looked thinner. Paler. Worn out in a way that success couldn't disguise. When I walked in, his eyes widened. I sat across from him. He spoke first. Dad, his voice cracked. I know what I did. I know we hurt you. I didn't say anything. I just watched him squirm. I lost my job 6 months ago. Monica's albums flopped. The bank's calling every day. She wants to leave. And Emma, she needs medicine, daycare, food. I'm scared. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small photo. A toddler girl, smiling with curly brown hair and the same soft eyes Elaine had. She doesn't know what I've done, he whispered. Please, don't take her home. I finally spoke. Cold. Calm. Controlled. You already did. You took my home. My future. You stood there and said nothing when Monica called me a burden. A mouth to feed. He buried his face in his hands. I know. I'm not here for apologies, Derek, I said. I'm here to see if you'll finally learn. He looked up, confused. You have 2 options, I continued. 1, you move out by the end of the month. I'll buy out your remaining debt so it doesn't destroy your credit. You start over. Clean slate. No help. He blinked. And the other? I slid a sealed envelope across the table. Option 2, you stay. But your rent stays tripled. And every cent goes into a trust fund for Emma. You'll see none of it. Not now. Not ever. But she'll have a future. He stared at the envelope, tears slipping quietly. You won't, forgive me. I looked out the window, watching the wind whip through the parking lot. I don't know if I can. But I can protect what's left of this family. And that starts with not letting history repeat itself. He nodded. For the first time, maybe in his life, he nodded without arguing. He chose option 2. And so the trust for Emma was created. Monica left a month later, moved back to Phoenix, from what I heard. Derek stayed. Quiet. Obedient. He sends me updates now and then. Never asking for help. Just letting me know Emma's healthy. I visit her sometimes. She doesn't know I'm her grandfather yet. But one day, I'll tell her everything. Every lie. Every betrayal. Every carved box that saved my life. And the day she turns 18. She'll inherit a home filled with more than money. She'll inherit the truth. You'd think that once a man sees his betrayers humbled, once he sets the trap, watches it spring, and sees the panic rise behind their eyes, he'd feel satisfied. But satisfaction doesn't come that easy. It doesn't come from watching Monica pack her things in silence and slam the door of her Lexus without so much as a goodbye. It doesn't come from seeing Derek, gaunt and shaken, signing paperwork for a trust he'll never control. And it doesn't come from knowing I now own the very home they used to laugh in while I slept in a shelter. No, satisfaction only came when I saw the first payment hit Emma's trust account. $7,200. I watched the number load on the bank portal like I was watching lightning strike. It wasn't about the money. It was about meaning. It was about telling the universe, you didn't break me. I now own 3 homes Monica had tried to use for short-term rentals. Each one had collapsed under her ego and bad management. Through silent shell companies, I picked up the properties at auction, renovated them properly, and repurposed them into affordable housing for struggling single parents and veterans, people like me who were discarded and overlooked. I called the initiative the Second Nail Project, after the nail in the coffin most people thought defined them. For me, that second nail. It was the moment I stopped mourning what I'd lost and started rebuilding what I could still give. The houses were no longer ghost mansions filled with Instagram furniture and lies. They were homes again. I returned to my workshop full-time. Business was better than ever. Vince and I had grown the Etsy store into a full online storefront. Orders came in from across the country. People wanted handmade pieces, but more than that, they wanted the story behind them. They wanted resilience. I began mentoring more kids, foster teens, juvenile rehab students, a few homeless young adults. They called me Mr. Douglas, and I called them builders. Every week, we met around a single, long table in the center of the warehouse. Every project began the same. What are we making? I'd ask. They'd shout back, something real. And that's what we did. Meanwhile, the local news picked up the story of the trust fund for Emma. Mia Vasquez, the reporter I'd spoken to months ago, asked to do a follow-up. I said yes, but only if it focused on the bigger mission, not just my revenge. The piece aired on a Sunday evening, titled, "From Discarded to Determined, One Man's Rise from Betrayal to Building a Legacy." It showed Emma's trust. My students at work. My workshop humming with life. The rosewood chair I carved in honor of Elaine, placed at the center of the frame. It ended with my voice, soft but clear. I lost everything I thought mattered. But I gained something more, purpose. And no one can steal that from you. Not even blood. The episode went viral. In just 48 hours, we received over 3,000 emails. Donations. Orders. Letters from people who'd been betrayed, left behind, erased, and who found hope in a man who refused to disappear. One email, in particular, stopped me cold. It was from Monica. Yes, her. The subject line just read, "You win." I stared at it for nearly an hour before I clicked. Douglas. I saw the news. I saw what you did. You always were better than us. Better than me. I won't ask for forgiveness. I won't pretend I deserve anything. But I want to say, I was wrong. About everything. About you. Tell Emma I'm sorry. M. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Forgiveness is a road, not a moment, and some people never earn a map. But I kept the email. Not out of sentiment. Out of reminder. People don't always come back to apologize because they've changed. Sometimes, they just see the consequences they never thought would reach them. As for Derek, he kept paying the trust fund rent. Quietly. Consistently. We spoke once every couple of weeks, briefly. Updates on Emma's health, daycare, small things. He never asked for money. Never asked to reconcile. And I didn't offer. Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means rebuilding boundaries with wisdom. The biggest moment came exactly a year after I walked out of that apartment with my suitcase and a photo of Elaine tucked under my coat. Emma's second birthday. Derek invited me. He didn't beg. Didn't push. Just a simple message. It's at the park by the lake. 3 p.m., she'd like to meet you properly. So would I. I arrived early, standing in the distance, watching the party unfold. Balloons. Cupcakes. A few parents. Derek looked tired, but present. And then. I saw her. Emma. My granddaughter. Holding a tiny toy hammer. He told her I worked with wood. She saw me standing there. Ran up without hesitation. You grandpa? She asked, head tilted like she was inspecting me for the job. I smiled. I guess I am. She handed me the toy hammer. Can we build something? I knelt in the grass, tears in my eyes, and said what I hadn't said out loud in 2 long, painful years. Yes, sweetheart. We can build anything. And that was the moment it all came together. The execution wasn't just revenge. It was redemption, carved not in wood, but in legacy. I thought I had seen the last of Monica. After that email, those few hollow lines of regret, I figured she was just another ghost in my past. A mistake sealed behind a locked door. But life doesn't just hand you the end you expect. 2 months after Emma's 2nd birthday, I received a letter. Not an email. A letter, typed, with a return address I didn't recognize. It was from a law firm in Denver. To Mr. Douglas Bryant. Our client, Monica Ray Whitaker, is pursuing litigation related to the mismanagement of assets held under the former Maple Stone Enterprises LLC, which was partially funded by your personal contributions prior to your removal from the asset stream. She claims that the properties held by the LLC were wrongfully acquired by third-party entities without full disclosure or equitable compensation. I stopped reading. It didn't matter how long the letter was. I knew what this was. Monica was suing me. Claiming that my own revenge, my careful, legal acquisition of the properties, was unjust enrichment. I laughed so hard I choked on my coffee. Then I felt the anger crawl up my spine like a familiar monster. She couldn't stand it. She couldn't stand that she lost control. That she'd been outplayed by the man she once tossed out like trash with a suitcase and $15,000 to his name. But there was something else in that letter. Something deeper. It wasn't just a legal play. It was a threat. Because the letter included this paragraph. If a court finds in Ms. Whitaker's favor, she will seek not only restitution for the property values but public damages for alleged reputational harm based on your recent media exposure and statements that may be deemed defamatory in nature. In other words, she was threatening to ruin me. Not just financially, but publicly. To smear the work I'd done. The trust fund. The workshops. The kids. She wanted to burn it all down. That night, I sat in the workshop long after everyone had gone home. The only sound was the creaking of the rafters in the wind. I stared at the chair I had carved in Elaine's memory, the one no one was allowed to sit in. And I asked her out loud. Did I go too far? But then I remembered the night I left that apartment with my suitcase. I remembered the sting of those words, just a mouth to feed. No. I didn't go too far. I just went smart. The next day, I met with Vince and my attorney. We reviewed every document. Every transaction. Every paper trail. We had proof, ironclad proof, that all of Monica's property losses were due to her own mismanagement and default. We had records of the defaulted mortgages, the city records of public auctions, the trust fund disbursement logs, and the contract Derek signed willingly. But the twist didn't end there. Because Vince, always 3 moves ahead, pulled out a folder I hadn't seen before. She made a mistake, he said, sliding it toward me. What kind? He grinned. She used one of the old LLCs you helped fund to apply for a line of credit last year, after the company had been dissolved. What does that mean? It means she committed bank fraud. I froze. The air in the room went still. Monica had applied for a $150,000 loan using an LLC that no longer existed, one that was supposed to have been shut down when I withdrew my name from every associated filing. She used my former stake as proof of value. In legal terms, that was fraud. In practical terms, it meant I had leverage. Powerful, undeniable leverage. We prepared a formal countersuit, one that included allegations of fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and misuse of trust-bound funds. When Monica's legal team received it, I was told she went silent for 3 days. Then came the second twist. Derek showed up. Not at the workshop. Not at the house. But at the second Nail Project open house event, where we were showcasing the work of our teenage apprentices. He didn't come with papers or drama. He came with a recording. "I found this on Monica's old laptop," he said quietly, pulling me aside. It was a video file. And when I played it back, it chilled me to the bone. Monica, sitting in the kitchen of the old apartment. Talking to a man I didn't recognize. Laughing. Saying. Of course he signed it over. He's an old man with a soft heart. He trusts Derek because it's his son. He'll do whatever we say as long as we pretend to love him. The man off-screen asked, "What if he asks questions?" And Monica said, "We just keep telling him we love him. By the time he figures it out, the house will be gone and so will the money." She laughed. They both laughed. And then she looked straight into the camera, just for a second, and said, "Suckers like him build our dreams." I sat there, watching the video again. And again. And again. Until the laughter stopped meaning anything and the silence afterward felt louder than thunder. This video changed everything. I didn't have to sue. I didn't have to fight in court. All I had to do was leak it. The next morning, I sent it anonymously to Mia, the journalist. I didn't say where it came from. I just included one line. For context, when betrayal sounds like laughter. It went viral in under 24 hours. Every person who had ever doubted my story suddenly saw the truth play out in HD clarity. Monica became radioactive. Her business, what was left of it, collapsed in days. The lawsuit? Withdrawn. No apology. No note. Just, gone. I saw one last social media post from her before she deleted everything. A black screen with white text that read, "Be careful who you underestimate." I smiled. Not out of cruelty. But because the world finally saw what I already knew. I wasn't just a survivor. I was the builder of my own damn justice. The day I felt peace again wasn't dramatic. There was no judge banging a gavel, no big scene with Monica begging for forgiveness or Derek falling to his knees in a parking lot. No. It was simpler than that. It came one early autumn morning, crisp air, golden leaves flickering in the breeze, when I was sitting on a bench outside Hayes' workshop with a mug of black coffee in one hand, and Emma's tiny fingers gripping the other. "Grandpa," she said, pointing at a bird on the fence, "do you think that one knows how to build a nest?" I smiled, watching the small creature tilt its head and hop along the beam. "Of course," I said. "Even the smallest ones know how to start over. That's what final justice feels like. Not revenge burning hot. But healing that's earned slowly. Painfully. Truthfully." After the video of Monica leaked, she vanished from public life. Her businesses dissolved. She tried to fight back, but public opinion, fueled by her own voice mocking a man she called a sucker, was louder than any lawyer. Even her supporters walked away. She sold the Lexus. Moved to Nevada, I think. Last I heard, she was applying for jobs under a different last name. Derek stayed in the house, my house, for another 7 months. He paid every dime of that triple rent, on time, without complaint. I never raised the amount. I didn't have to. The weight of conscience was heavier than any invoice. He came to every workshop event Emma attended. He never tried to take credit. He watched from a distance, quietly helping her carve toy boats and paint wooden blocks. He was learning. Slowly. We never spoke about the past again. But one day, after a workshop demonstration, he asked, "Do you think I'll ever deserve to be called your son again?" I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I handed him a chisel. A small one, Elaine's old favorite. "If you want to be part of this family," I told him, "then build something worth passing down." He didn't say anything. Just took the chisel in both hands like it weighed more than it looked. And he started working. As for me, I kept going. The second nail project became more than a side mission. It became a movement. We launched 3 more workshops across Colorado. Each one trained youth, housed the homeless, and offered second chances to those discarded by society or family. Vince and I hired a small team to manage operations, and I trained a group of apprentices to lead the shop floor. I still carved every day, but now my hands were teaching as much as building. One of my favorite projects was a new community center downtown. The mayor had seen the viral story and offered us city funding to design the space. I built the welcome desk myself, oak, engraved with a phrase I once whispered in the dark. "Buried isn't broken." The desk sits in the lobby now. Kids and visitors run their hands over the engraving, not knowing it was once a promise I made to myself in a rain-soaked alley. And Emma? She became my anchor. I picked her up from daycare twice a week. She came to the workshop on Saturdays, always asking for real tools, even though we gave her rubber hammers and soft pine scraps. She said she wanted to build a castle one day. I told her we'd start with a chair. One afternoon, she found a dusty photo of Elaine in the corner of my office. "Who's she?" she asked, gently. "That," I said, voice catching in my throat, "is the reason everything I do still has a heart." She nodded solemnly, the way only a child can. "Then she's here, even if we can't see her." "Yes, sweetheart. She's everywhere. Especially in you." As for Monica, her threats couldn't touch me anymore. The truth had scorched the lies clean. The world had seen who she really was, and so had Emma. Because when Emma asked, a year later, why she didn't see the other lady anymore, Derek knelt down and said words I'll never forget. Because not everyone who calls you family acts like one. But the people who show up, who stay, who build with you, they're the ones who count. She nodded, then ran back into the shop to finish painting her birdhouse. Final justice isn't a courtroom victory. It's when the people who wronged you have to live in the ruins of their own choices, while you rise higher than they ever imagined. It's watching your betrayers fade while your name becomes a legacy. It's handing a child a hammer and watching them believe they can change the world. And for me, Douglas Bryant, it's knowing that even after betrayal, abandonment, and being cast aside, I never gave up. I just picked up the pieces. And I built something better. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.